Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are also paying our most humble Dandavat Pranams to Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, for providing us this wonderful translation and commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're also praying to Srimati Radharani through the recommendation of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who told us if we cannot understand Radharani through the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, then our study has been for waste. Yadi seva vanchitasya ma yasya kripaya vayam labema sarvam prapnumha prayojanam damni Shri Bhagavat Pade Krishna sambandhi sarvam cha yadi na jani mahe tutam asdadasasu sahasreshu shlokanam Bhagavat oktishu Radharanimna vindhamha tada nisfalam Bhagavat adhyayanam radhikaya kripam vina vyartasyat sarva parishrama. If we are cheated out of serving that personality whose mercy awards us everything we need, including residence in the Lord's holy Dham, and all things connected to Krishna, and if we cannot understand or discover Radharani within the 18,000 verses of Bhagavatam, then our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam has been pointless. Without the mercy of Srimati Radharani, all our efforts are in vain. So we are continuing from Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Śiva, text 64. And we are also remembering yesterday was Shiva Ratri, so we are feeling very auspicious to read these songs sung by Lord Shiva glorifying Krishna, and remembering that that Shiva is called the Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, the best of the Vaishnavas. Shrishtam svashakyedam anupravishtas chatur vidham puram atmam sakena ato vidustam purusham santam antar bhunte rishkayer madhu saragam yaha. My dear Lord, after creating your own potencies, you enter within the creation in four kinds of forms. Being within the hearts of the living entities, you know them and know how they are enjoying their senses. The so-called happiness of this material creation is exactly like the bee's enjoyment of honey after it has been collected in the honeycomb. I should mention that today is also a very auspicious day regarding Lord Shiva. We're at the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mutt, Mula Mutt in Navadvip Dham, West Bengal, India. The temple of Sada Shiva was installed on this day many years ago. So we're also remembering that very happily. Purport. The material cosmic manifestation is an exhibition of the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because dull matter cannot work independently, the Lord himself enters within this material creation in the form of a partial expansion, Paramatma, and he enters also by his separated parts and parcels, the living entities. In other words, both the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead enter into the material creation just to make it active, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.5. Apareyam itistvanyam prakritim vidhi me param, jivha bhutam mahabaho, yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mind which consists of all living entities who are struggling with the material nature and are sustaining the universe. Since the material world cannot work independently, the living entities enter into the material manifestation in 4 different types of bodies. The word chatur vidham is significant in this verse. There are 4 types of living entities born within this material world. Some are born by way of an embryo, jaryuja, some by way of eggs, andaja, some by perspiration, svedaja, and some, like the trees, by way of seeds, udbija. Regardless of how these living entities appear, they are all busy in the pursuit of sense enjoyment. The materialistic scientists' contention that living entities other than human beings have no soul is nullified herein. Whether they are born through an embryo, eggs, perspiration, or seeds, all living entities in the 8,400,000 species of life are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and each therefore is an individual spiritual spark and soul. The Supreme Personality of Godhead also remains within the heart of the living entity, regardless of whether the living entity is a man, animal, tree, germ, or microbe. The Lord resides in everyone's heart. And because all living entities who come to this material world do so in order to fulfill their desire for sense enjoyment, the Lord directs the living entities to enjoy their senses. Thus, the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knows everyone's desires as stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15. Sarvasya chaham hridishani vishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Remaining within the hearts of all living entities, the Lord bestows remembrance by which the living entities can enjoy certain things. Thus, the living entities create their enjoyable honeycombs and then enjoy them. The example of the bees is appropriate because when bees try to enjoy their honeycomb, they have to suffer the bites of other bees. Because bees bite one another when they enjoy honey, they are not exclusively enjoying the sweetness of the honey, for there is also suffering. In other words, the living entities are subjected to the pains and pleasures of material enjoyment, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing their plans for sense enjoyment, is aloof from them. In the Upanishads, the example is given of 2 birds sitting on a tree. One bird, the jiva or living entity, is enjoying the fruits of that tree, and the other bird, Paramatma, is simply witnessing. In Bhagavad Gita 13.23, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Paramatma is described as Upadrashta, the overseer, and Anumanta, the permitter. Thus, the Lord simply witnesses and gives the living entity sanction for sense enjoyment. It is the Paramatma also who gives the intelligence by which the bees can construct a hive, collect honey from various flowers, store it, and enjoy it. Although the Paramatma is aloof from the living entities, he knows their intentions. He gives them facilities by which they can enjoy or suffer the results of their actions. Human society is exactly like a beehive, for everyone is engaged in collecting honey from various flowers or collecting money from various sources, and creating large empires for common enjoyment. However, after these empires are created, the bites of other nations have to be suffered. Sometimes nations declare war upon one another, and the human beehives become sources of misery. Although human beings are creating their beehives in order to enjoy the sweetness of their senses, they are at the same time suffering from the bites of other persons or nations. The Supreme Personality of Godhead as Paramatma is simply witnessing all these activities. The conclusion is that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Jivas enter into this material world. However, the Paramatma, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, is worshipable because he has arranged for the happiness of the living entity in the material world. Because it is the material world, however, no one can enjoy any kind of happiness without inebriety. Material enjoyment means inebriety, whereas spiritual enjoyment means pure enjoyment under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 65. Sahesha lokan ati chanda vego vikarshasi tvam kalu kalayana bhutani bhutar anumeya tattvo ganha valir vayur iva vishaya. My dear Lord, your absolute authority cannot be directly experienced, but one can guess by seeing the activities of the world that everything is being destroyed in due course of time. The force of time is very strong and everything is being destroyed by something else. Just as one animal is being eaten by another animal, time scatters everything exactly as the wind scatters clouds in the sky. Purport. The process of destruction is going on according to the law of nature. Nothing within this material world can be permanent, although scientists, philosophers, workers, and everyone else are trying to make things permanent. One foolish scientist recently declared that eventually life will be made permanent through science. Some so-called scientists are also trying to manufacture living entities within the laboratory. Thus, in one way or another, everyone is busy denying the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and rejecting the supreme authority of the Lord. However, the Lord is so powerful that he destroys everything in the form of death. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 10.34, Mrityu sarva haraschaham, I am all-devouring death. The Lord is just like death to the atheists, for he takes away everything they accumulate in the material world. Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlad, always denied the existence of the Lord, and he tried to kill his 5-year-old boy due to the boy's unflinching faith in God. However, in due course of time, the Lord appeared as Narasimhadev and killed Hiranyakashipu in the presence of his son. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13.47, this killing process is natural. Jivo jivasya jivanam. One animal is food for another animal. A frog is eaten by a snake is eaten by a mongoose, and a mongoose is eaten by another animal. In this way, the process of destruction goes on by the supreme will of the Lord. Although we do not see the hand of the Supreme Lord directly, we can feel the presence of that hand through the Lord's process of destruction. We can see the clouds scattered by the wind, although we cannot see how this is being done because it is not possible to see the wind. Similarly, although we do not see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can see that he controls the process of destruction. The destructive process is going on fiercely under the control of the Lord, but the atheists cannot see it. Text 66. Pramhatam uchar iti kritya chintaya pravridha lobham vishayeshu lalasam tvam apramata sahasrashabipadyase chuleli hano hir ivakum antaka. My dear Lord, all living entities within this material world are mad after planning for things, and they are always busy with a desire to do this or that. This is due to uncontrollable greed. For greed, the greed for material enjoyment is always existing in the living entity, but your lordship is always alert, and in due course of time you strike him just as a snake seizes a mouse and very easily swallows him. Purport. Everyone is greedy, and everyone makes plans for material enjoyment. In his lust for material enjoyment, the living entity is described as a madman. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.27, Prakritir kriyamanani gunhai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. Everything is enacted by the laws of nature, and these laws are under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The atheists or unintelligent men do not know this. They are busy making their own plans, and big nations are busy expanding their empires, and yet we know that in due course of time many empires have come into existence and have been destroyed. Many aristocratic families were created by people in extreme madness, but we can see that in the course of time those families and empires have all been destroyed. But still the foolish atheists do not accept the supreme authority of the Lord. Such foolish people unnecessarily concoct their own duties without referring to the supreme authority of the Lord. The so-called political leaders are busy making plans to advance the material prosperity of their nation, but factually these political leaders only want an exalted position for themselves. Due to their greed for material position, they falsely present themselves as leaders before the people and collect their votes, although they are completely under the grip of the laws of material nature. These are some of the faults of modern civilization. Without taking to God consciousness and accepting the authority of the Lord, the living entities become ultimately confused and frustrated in their plan-making attempts. Due to their unauthorized plans for economic development, the price of commodities is rising daily all over the world. So much so that it has become difficult for the poorer classes, and they are suffering the consequences. And due to lack of Krishna consciousness, people are being fooled by so-called leaders and plan makers. Consequently, the sufferings of the people are increasing. According to the laws of nature, which are backed by the Lord, nothing can be permanent within this material world. Therefore, everyone should be allowed to take shelter of the Absolute in order to be saved. In this regard, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarva lokam maheshvaram suridham sarva bhutanam gyatvamam shanti richati. The sage who knows me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. If one wants peace of mind and tranquility in society, he must accept the fact that the real enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the proprietor of everything all over the universe, and He is the supreme friend of all living entities as well. By understanding this, people can become happy and peaceful individually and collectively.
Sounds like he was talking about Trump.
Maharaj say something, Prabhuji?
Yes, Maharaj said it sounds like Srila Prabhupada's purport was directed to Donald Trump, the President of the United States.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll end our reading here for today, and then we'll continue from text 67 on Monday. Okay. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhaktivedanta Varna Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Nishangapali Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Bade Subhadra Ju Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari 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 Bol, Jai Shrimati Uma Devi Dasi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
श्रीपाद कृष्ण केशव प्रभु जी की जय।
Jagurudev.
दंडवत
Dandavat
प्रभु जी।
Stiri.
दंडवत।
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण।